Before we talk about what to eat and how the reset works, I want to begin with something that is often missing from conversations about weight and health in midlife. Most women are given advice about food and exercise without ever being taught how their metabolism actually works. So when weight gain begins in the 40s and 50s, or even sometimes in your 30s, it can feel confusing and often very frustrating, especially when lifestyle habits haven't changed dramatically. But once you understand the metabolic blueprint of the body, many of the changes that happen during midlife begin to make sense. So the goal of this program is not simply to follow a diet. You know that. The goal is to help you develop metabolic literacy, which is a clear understanding of the biological symptoms that regulate weight, energy, and inflammation. Because when you understand how these systems work, you will regain something incredibly important, which is agency over your health. A helpful way to think about metabolism is through what we call the hormone pyramid. At the base of the pyramid are the hormones that control energy storage and energy release. These hormones determine whether your body is in fat storage mode or in fat burning mode. At the top of the pyramid are hormones that influence mood, sleep, and reproductive health. Many women are told that menopause-related weight gain is caused simply by declining estrogen. But in reality, the primary drivers of weight gain during midlife are usually two hormones that sit lower in the pyramid. That is cortisol and insulin. These two hormones act as the master regulators of metabolic signaling. So if cortisol and insulin remain chronically elevated, the body shifts into a state that favors fat storage, inflammation, and metabolic disruption. So understanding how these two hormones interact is the key to restoring metabolic balance. The purpose of the Meta Reset is to address the metabolic systems at the base of the hormone pyramid. This program focuses on three core objectives. 1, we're going to be stabilizing blood sugar. 2, we're going to be reducing chronic stress signals. And 3, we'll be improving metabolic flexibility. All that with the objective to give you metabolic agency. When insulin and cortisol stabilize, the body becomes more willing to release stored energy. And at this point, fat loss can occur more naturally as the metabolic system returns to balance. Let's start with cortisol, the stress signal. It's the body's primary stress hormone. In healthy amounts, cortisol is absolutely essential. It helps wake you up in the morning, it responds to challenges, and mobilize energy when we need it. When stress becomes chronic, though, cortisol levels can remain elevated for long periods. And this can happen for many reasons, including work stress, sleep disruption, emotional stress, chronic overexertion, blood sugar instability. All those things keep our cortisol elevated. When cortisol remains elevated, the body shifts into a protective mode. In this state, the body behaves as if resources have become scarce or unpredictable. This metabolic environment can lead to increased fat storage, particularly around the belly, disrupted blood sugar regulation, stronger cravings for sugar or refined carbohydrates, sleep disruption, fatigue, and burnout. From the body's perspective, high cortisol signals uncertainty and threat. And when the body perceives threat, it becomes much less willing to release stored energy. Because if the lion is walking into the room, there is no need to digest, there is no need to heal, and it's certainly not the time to release any stored energy. Second hormone is insulin. It's the energy storage hormone. Primary role is to move glucose from the bloodstream into the cells. When insulin levels are elevated, the body receives a signal to store energy rather than to release it. This means that when insulin remains high throughout the day, the body has difficulty accessing stored fat for energy. You cannot release stored fat when insulin is high. Several factors can cause insulin levels to remain high, including frequent blood sugar spikes, refined carbs and sugars, irregular eating patterns, chronic stress, sleep deprivation again. When insulin stays elevated for long periods, fat loss becomes much more difficult, even when calorie intake decreases. This is one of the reasons many women feel as though their metabolism suddenly has stopped working during midlife. In reality, the metabolic system is not broken. It's responding to hormonal signals that favor energy storage rather than energy release. Next, let's talk about blood sugar regulation. Cortisol and insulin are closely connected through one critical system, blood sugar regulation. When blood sugar rises rapidly after a meal, insulin increases to bring the glucose back down. This is a life-saving process. But when blood sugar drops too quickly, then the body releases cortisol to mobilize additional energy. So if blood sugar rises and falls like a roller coaster repeatedly throughout the day, the body can become stuck in a cycle where both insulin and cortisol remain elevated. Over time, this cycle contributes to fatigue, to cravings, inflammation, weight gain, metabolic dysfunction, or even metabolic chaos. One of the primary goals of the Meta Reset is therefore to stabilize blood sugar. That is going to be our key driver. When blood sugar becomes more stable, both insulin and cortisol can begin to normalize. What's the role of estrogen and progesterone, particularly during perimenopause and menopause? Because both of those hormones we know naturally begin to decline or shift, as we've seen in sometimes erratic ways, particularly in perimenopause. These hormonal shifts influence metabolism in several important ways. Estrogen plays an important role in maintaining insulin sensitivity, which helps the body regulate blood sugar efficiently. So, of course, as estrogen levels decline, the body may become slightly more resistant to insulin. And this is key because we have data that shows that while women have an advantage over men in their reproductive years, as soon as they hit perimenopause, menopause, they become much more resistant to insulin. This means blood sugar levels can rise more easily after meals, more easily than it did before. Progesterone also plays a role in regulating the nervous system and stress physiology. So lower progesterone levels can make your body more sensitive to stress signals, which can contribute to higher cortisol levels. These changes do not cause weight gain directly, of course, but they make the metabolic system more sensitive to stress and blood sugar fluctuations. So what you eat becomes much more important. This is why many women notice metabolic changes during midlife, even when their lifestyle habits have not changed significantly. Another important factor during midlife is body composition. As we age, muscle mass naturally tends to decline. So muscle tissue plays an important role in metabolic health because it helps regulate blood sugar. Muscle acts as one of the body's primary sites for storing and using glucose. When muscle mass decreases, the body has fewer places to store glucose efficiently. Or when we don't use our muscles, the body also cannot store glucose in the muscles. This contributes to higher blood sugar levels and higher insulin over time. Maintaining muscle mass through adequate protein intake and strength training becomes an important part of metabolic health during midlife. Once we understand the hormonal systems involved in metabolism, the next question becomes, what influences those hormones every day? And there are really two major factors that shape these metabolic signals on a daily basis. That's the food we eat and the stress signals that our body experiences. How does food play a role here? How does food influence these hormones? Food is really powerful because it directly influences blood sugar and insulin levels, which in turn affect cortisol and fat storage. The Meta Reset uses a nutritional structure designed to support these metabolic systems rather than disrupt them. The food emphasized during the resets are chosen intentionally to support metabolic stability. Let's go over these foods specifically. Protein plays a central role in metabolic health. Adequate protein intake helps stabilize blood sugar, reduce hunger and cravings, and supports muscle mass. Maintaining muscle mass becomes particularly important midlife, especially during weight loss, because muscle tissue helps regulate glucose metabolism, as we saw. For these reasons, meals in the Meta Reset are built around a clear protein foundation. Vegetables provide fiber, micronutrients, antioxidants, phytonutrients that support metabolic health. They are non-negotiable. Fiber slows the absorption of glucose into the bloodstream, and it helps prevent large blood sugar spikes. Vegetables also provide volume, satiety, while maintaining a relatively low energy density. For most individuals, non-starchy vegetables can be consumed generously and without any strict limits, and they're a non-negotiable part of the Meta Reset, but of any healthy lifestyle. Another key principle of the Meta Reset is the emphasis on whole, minimally processed foods. Why? Because highly processed foods tend to combine refined carbs, sugars, industrial fats in ways that really disrupt metabolic signaling, and we're only starting to understand how that actually works. These foods can drive inflammation, insulin spikes, appetite dysregulation, but a whole host of hormone dysregulation that we're starting to understand that even leptin, our fat storage hormone, and ghrelin, our hunger hormone, all of those are actually dysregulated by processed foods. So by simplifying the diet to whole foods, the body receives clearer metabolic signals and inflammation can begin to decrease. One of the most important outcomes of this program is not simply weight loss. It is metabolic literacy. Understanding how your metabolism works allows you to make decisions about nutrition, stress, and lifestyle that support your physiology from today onwards. Rather than feeling that your body's unpredictable and working against you, you begin to see how your daily habits influence metabolic signaling. This understanding restores a sense of agency and partnership with your body. You start understanding the signals and become in conversation again with your body. Now that you understand the metabolic foundations behind the program, the next step is to look at how the reset is implemented in practice. So in the next module, we're going to walk through the actual structure of the food chart of the Meta Reset and how to begin applying these principles in your daily nutrition.